I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Dietrich. Jordan Rodelli is on vacation, and Andrew Kuo does not take days off. Mr. Andrew Kuo, there's a lot going on right now. Normally I ask you how you are, and you're always great. You're always really enthusiastic. But today's a little different. We've got some heavier subjects to start with. So, Andrew Kuo, how are you?
I am awake. I feel engaged, and I'm ready to talk about all the things that are happening, man. How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I just didn't want to set you up to say, I'm doing amazing. And then you have to say, well, okay, in more serious news.
I'm lucky. Everything is okay on my end, and I'm definitely into what's happening around our beloved league, man.
So if I sound a little weird today, my allergies are really kicking up. I'm a little stuffy. I always forget that I have allergies.
Are you sure it's not the vid?
I don't think it's the vid. Every time I forget. And it's an annual thing. I'm like, oh, why am I sniffling? Why is this happening to me? Yeah. Why am I having watery eyes? And then I'm like, oh, right, I have allergies. And they always arrive in August.
I think getting a little bit of a touch of the allergies and maybe a touch of the winter cold is always gonna be forever changed now. Be like, oh, right, this is just allergies. I get these every year. It's okay. Yeah,
I didn't feel COVID-y. I didn't have a COVID scare.
Respect.
I know this is engaging stuff. So, the news is evolving literally as we record. Things are occurring in the NBA that are going to shape the rest of the season as well as the moment right now. So, going back to yesterday, here's what happened. You had the Milwaukee Bucks took the court for their, I believe they entered the court for their Game 4.
Are you sure? I think Orlando did, right?
Or maybe I'm getting this wrong. I thought the Bucks came out and then left the court, but maybe they didn't leave the locker room. So maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't watching it when it occurred.
Usually the broadcast doesn't have the warm up, but I was ready for it. I was 5 minutes early. No minutes off, and I think Orlando came out for the shoot around, and Milwaukee never did.
Gotcha.
And they were in the locker room. I guess the reporters talking to their lawyer about what they could do because they are employees and they were on strike.
So, after my bungled effort to describe exactly what happened in accurate parameters, well, okay. So anyway, Orlando didn't play. And they more or less began a full day of striking by the NBA players. And there were no playoff games yesterday. And then it sort of spread by osmosis and the power of this gesture to some baseball teams, to some tennis players, to even the NBA's national broadcast team. And it was a pretty powerful day. And the NBA players had made this decision following the shooting in Wisconsin of a driver who was shot 6 times, I believe, in his back by a police officer. And there was protests followed that in Wisconsin, and there was an incident in which a young white guy came across state lines with a assault rifle, I believe, and ended up killing 2 people and shooting another one. So there was a lot of violence, there was death, and the NBA players decided that playing the game felt hollow. From what we heard from the NBA players yesterday, what stuck out to you?
Well, it had begun kind of earlier in the day, and if we really want to talk about it, it had begun months before with Kyrie Irving. But what I remember was, I woke up and I was thinking about what Doc Rivers had said about the incident in Wisconsin and how powerful that was, I thought. And then Paul George coming out and describing to us what we couldn't really see with our eyes and how he felt. And those were two pretty heavy emotional things. And at that point, I was almost like, it's okay if we take a break from this thing, man. We create the parameters for this game and this bubble, and we can change them. It's not an asteroid hitting our world. We created these rules, and we can make it better for everybody. And when the Bucks didn't come out, it quickly evolved to something, I think, bigger. And I always use this word powerful, but that's how it felt. I felt like some images at the right time in the right moment are lasting. And it's so odd. If you told me last year I'd be looking at an NBA playoff game in August with no fans, just video monitors, and the teams refused to come out, but for two different reasons, it would be hard to extrapolate that information, right?
Yeah, I was at a protest, and we were all taking a knee and wearing masks. This was a couple months ago, and I just thought in that same, perspective, imagine if someone just showed me a photo of this or just planted me here even a year ago.
Yeah.
What's happening here? Why are you kneeling in a field surrounded by people wearing masks?
Yeah. And I think it's a testament to how adaptable and how amazing human brains are, I think, because I don't think any of this is shocking. If you just said this happened, then this happened, then this happened, I'd be like, right, that all makes sense. And it ceases to become abstract immediately. But in a burger bub of my mind, it is, I have to step away and be like, this is heavy for many reasons. And I think what the players did yesterday was pretty awesome and profound. And this was my hope. We talked about cookies, on cookies about the bub. And I think I was against it. I thought it was too dangerous because of the virus. But the potential to make a political statement was huge. And in a way that happened yesterday, right?
It did, and I was more cynical than you were about the potential of the bub to be utilized for social change. And, this remains to be seen, of course. But I was, and I have been kind of turned off by just writing Black Lives Matter on the court. And the way they handled the phraseology on the jerseys, to me, was really gross. To say, they're going to be able to pick their own thing, and then giving them an approved list. That, to me, made what people chose meaningless. And that's writing fair. Black Lives Matter, hashtag, whatever, on the court, to me, just felt like meaningless gestures that the league was going through the motions of pretending that this was about social change and not actually about basketball and money. And yesterday felt as if the players turned the tables on that. And from what they said, some guys seem to feel the same way from what I just described, as this was hollow. And what are we even doing here? We were kind of sold the opportunity to take a stand and help people. And the players have been doing their best job at doing that. Chris Paul, following one of the games recently, immediately started talking about police brutality. He wouldn't even talk about the game that had been, just culminated. And we've seen guys, whether it's Tobias Harris or LeBron James, they're going to just talk about Breonna Taylor. And I think the players have done the best they can. And to see this happen again, not that they thought they were going to actually end police brutality, but just to see it happen while they're in this bubble, I think there was a collective sort of, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and even as we were watching these incredible games, and the Luka moment stands out for me, and your boy Dame Dollar kind of becoming even a bigger star in this bubble, it had a sense of, and I always repeat myself, but it was hard to unsee the last few months in America and the world. And the bubble was joyous. I think it worked. The games were great. People seemed safe. Virus related, they seemed safe. Emotionally, I think it was challenging. And then, I was describing to one of my friends who isn't into the NBA, and he was like, was it good? Did it work? I'm like, it worked on one level in that the games were awesome. It didn't work because it was hard to unsee why we were there.
I'm going to go back to something I said a couple episodes ago, where I said, credit the players.
Yeah.
Okay, NBA, you did a good job. You showed the power of masks and frequent testing. If you can test people all the time and you can convince them to wear masks, you can beat COVID. You can do it. You can create a far safer experience than most people have, because those are lacking in a lot of places. No one has that kind of frequent testing as the NBA. But yeah, if you can do that, you can create a burger bub. Yep. Congrats. Props on that. But the NBA does not get credit for anything else. It's the players. It's the players who get credit for the game. It's the players who get credit for taking a stand. And people like the NBA is the best league. Okay, but that's a low fucking threshold. Right. They're a bunch of billionaires, and half of them donate to Donald Trump. Let's not go giving them all hand jobs yet.
This is the best pizza crust sandwich I've ever had.
Right?
Yeah.
It's come on, man. Your boy the Frittata gave tens of thousands of dollars to a re-elect Trump pack. Get out of here with these guys being paragons of virtue and progressivism. No, they are not. The players are. So look, they're literal billionaires. They don't do anything. That's my other thing about the owners. They don't do anything. It's just the players. The players go out there and create the product, are in the bubble. They're the ones who do everything to make us like the sport. The owners don't do anything, and they get half the money. They don't do anything. They just sit there owning a team. They got rich. They use their wealth to buy into a team. Now they own that, and they get half the money. Get out of here, owners, governors. Anyway, but that whole part aside, I just want to say the players have done a really good job, and the owners and the NBA has not. So when I get a PR blast in my email, immediately saying NBA postpones the games. No, you didn't. No, you did not. The players went on a wildcat strike and they shut you down. So you can pretend that you're behind this, that it's all good, but that's not what happened.
I think this is a small issue of wording. A Band-Aid is a brand, and a Sharpie is a brand. It's not a marker. So I think corporate speak, which I'm not necessarily against, we could just accept corporate speak as its own thing. It's when they say the NBA, it's this thing that you think is happening is now suspended. But our job is to sift through, and you're right, it's the players. And I think LeBron James, well, first, I know it sounds hokey, but it's cool that these group of players brought us together in multiple ways, right? Because a week ago they brought us together to watch them play, and they're unique talents on Earth, and to watch them just do their thing is a 1,000% joy, I think. And even relegated teams like the Knicks, we're lucky to have them, and I think they brought us together again because they decided not to play, and there's such power there, I think. And I'm glad this is one of my favorite hobbies, because these players are not replaceable. They are unique, every one of them, and they're in this league together, which is wild. And I think LeBron James did a good job of reiterating what you were talking about, which is we demand action from these owners. We cannot change the world. You're asking us to do too much as human beings. Not even Donald Trump can't change everything all at once. So LeBron James, what he's saying is the players want their owners, their colleagues, their bosses to do something, because what if, I was thinking out loud on Twitter, it's what if think tanks are just over? And what if the real influence is LeBron James talking to Steve Ballmer and asking him to do something? Because Steve Ballmer wields quite a bit of power, and not only with his money, but his influence and his access. What if LeBron James has sat him down and be like, hey, if you feel okay owning a team in our league, then you should be okay with the terms of that. And I'm asking you as a representative of your workforce to do something to help us. And I think that could be something moving forward.
I agree. And this dynamic is not exclusive to basketball. This is what strikes are about. This is what unions are about. And the NBA players, who are majority black men, obviously have the right to say, we are creating and generating all this money that you are getting, and as I said, for doing nothing. For doing nothing. You just had money and now you own part of this.
Although they do something, because there's good ones and bad ones. Like the owner of a good team is not doing the same thing as James Dolan.
I'm not referring to like whether they are good at being an owner or whether they're meddling. I'm saying they don't do anything. They don't play basketball. They don't coach the team. They just own it. Yeah. Like, of course, they can dictate whether the franchise wins more games or not, but that's different. They're not doing anything. You know, like I guess.
Yeah.
I just mean Mark Cuban's not doing anything.
Oh, I disagree. I mean,
What is he doing? He's running a team? He's not running a team. He's got GMs. He owns it. But he's not out there shooting in the gym.
I mean, like, you don't have to be the last. Like, if in a kitchen, there's a lot of people that go into a dish, right? And the person that cooks it with heat isn't the only thing that makes that engine run. I think it's this is like a society, right?
Well,
so
we're also talking about this now in terms of like how well an organization is run, and I don't care about that in this context.
Let me rephrase.
I'm saying get Cuban out and move someone in, nothing changes.
I disagree.
But someone else runs that team. Who cares?
I think, I don't. I'm not trying to compare LeBron James to Mark Cuban. That is something that we don't need to do.
But Mark Cuban doesn't do anything. He's interchangeable. You can swap him out for someone else, and maybe that person will suck, like a James Dolan. Maybe that person will be a, quote, good owner. It doesn't matter.
But
the product doesn't change because of Mark Cuban.
But you can swap LeBron James out for the best baller in your YMCA and be like, they're just playing basketball. They're interchangeable. But it's not.
No. I disagree. I completely disagree.
But I disagree with the idea that, it's okay to dislike wealth. I think we're doing that, and that sounds good to me. But to say Joseph Tsai does nothing is not right.
What does he do for the NBA? Nothing. He does nothing for the NBA.
He has to have a vision for what this company is and what his own corner of this company represents. And it goes into, I don't think it's as easy as being like, I bought it, now it runs by itself. You have to do things.
But Joseph Tsai just bought in. He has literally nothing to do with the success of the NBA. Nothing. But now he's an owner. He had nothing to do with this.
But then when a player gets drafted, the league is already running, right? Like Zion Williamson's just stepping in.
But they're the players. That's who we watch.
I don't disagree with what we watch.
I just don't get what the defense of the owners being anything but interchangeable is. Like,
I know.
Yes, it's true. You could say, well, they're the ones who institute some changes in the league, and they're the ones who work on the marketing of it and the direction, etc. But these aren't even people who have anything to do with basketball.
They don't slam and jam. That's true. They're
not basketball minds. They're just business guys. And this business is based on these guys playing basketball. It wouldn't matter what they do. I don't know.
I know this is a trigger, but I think maybe to take a further step away, a lot of headlines today are like, Kyrie Irving was right. You all dogged him, but he ends up being right. I'm like, let's stop doing this. We can criticize them for their actions. We can criticize everyone for their actions. But to say that people with wealth, with power, don't do anything is weird.
But I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that in the least. I'm saying guys who got rich and used their wealth to buy an NBA franchise are not doing anything for the league. They are rich guys who wanted to own a team. They didn't build a little basketball team and it grew and it became the Charlotte Hornets. They bought that franchise. Like George Shinn bought that franchise at some point.
But
And
what about someone who moves a team to Oklahoma City? That's an action with results, right?
Yeah, and that was great. That was a fantastic move they did.
I mean, you love Oklahoma City Thunder. You like that team. I mean,
What do you mean? What they did was revolting.
I don't like it either, but Oklahoma City Thunder fans are psyched. Like, that happened. When you say owners don't do anything, that happened, right?
Yeah, but that was also like they lied, bought a team and moved it to a smaller market.
This is my point, right? Like, they have a lot of influence.
I mean, I don't know. I just find this idea that we should appreciate the NBA owners to be nonsensical,
I didn't
especially
say
in
that.
this moment.
I say we can criticize everybody, right? And
my point is, to me, the owners obviously make way too big of a cut. Like, it's 50-50. They make way too much of a cut.
I agree with that.
So I'm going back to what you were saying before. Let's get off the topic of whether I think owners are like worthy of a claim or not. What I'm saying, where I'm going with this is that, of course, the employees, the LeBron James and the superstars of the league can go to these guys who are getting half the money and not dribbling a basketball, but getting half the money regardless, not coaching teams, not doing anything, as I was saying, about the game that we love, and say, well, if we're making this amount of money for you, we expect that you will behave in a certain way, that you will fund things that we view as important, that you will take that cut and you will use it appropriately because we are generating that money for you as the workers. That was where I'm going at.
Right. Yeah, I think the paradigms of that interaction should always be addressed every season, every game, every practice, how that relationship is working out. And there's not necessarily action to take at every moment, but there seems to be action to be taken now. I think, are you eating a carrot?
Finish up the last of my water.
Nice. I think
I didn't even know.
I think LeBron James and the players have a point here, and obviously, but we side with the players always, and I think we appreciate the guys who go out on the court. Cookies does, and I think we're in agreement there. I think it's up to Chris Paul and the Players Union and Andre Iguodala to represent these players. And LeBron James wields quite a bit of power, and what he says goes. He's incredible. And, it's not to be forgotten that he runs a sports agency, and he advocates for these players. So he doesn't want to go on strike. He wants his colleagues to get their cut, even more than their fair share. I think that's fair. And what is fair, right? I think they should probably get 75%. But I think these working dynamics are something there's a paradigm shift happening in America, and COVID has accelerated that. And you see it not only in sports, but in the stock market. I think a lot of people are like, what's happening with my Ford stock and my Walmart stock and my oil stocks? It's like, oh, you don't have any Google or Apple or Microsoft. Right. The world is shifting a little bit, and the interns always tease boomers in basketball terms, but I think we're looking at an actual shift in our paradigm. And this is just a small part of it. But what LeBron demands from ownership is a profound kind of movement that is going to be a conversation moving forward indefinitely.
I just think the players don't need the owners at all, and they know it. They know it. They do not need the owners. The owners are irrelevant. They are just franchises, and the players know this. And that's why it broke earlier, like recently, within the last half an hour or so, that the players had decided that the playoffs would resume and that today's games would be postponed like yesterday's were. But I don't know what this means. I can't tell if this diminishes. It doesn't diminish the feelings we had yesterday and the voices we heard of people like Chris Webber or, Kenny Smith, people who were emotional and spoke from the heart and spoke with gravity and depth about why they weren't playing and why the players weren't playing. And I think that power can't be taken away. I do wonder if the power collectively of where this could go is sapped by saying, well, we're going to play though. I'm more thinking this even strategically. I don't think the players should have said we're leaving the bubble immediately, season's over, because then the story's over. Then what are we talking about? Oh, the NBA's done. While they're there and they kind of have this season hostage, they do have negotiating power. They do have a platform that maybe they didn't really have in the bubble before they made it clear that they could jeopardize its entire existence. Mm-hmm. So saying we're going to play the season, we'll see what this means. Does it mean we're going to start playing tomorrow? Does it mean we're going to stay here in the bubble and make you wait this out and sweat it? Because after a while, the NBA can't continue with its charade of the NBA as a business of saying we support this, because they co-opted it yesterday, and that's when you saw the Nets, or the Knicks, comical statement like, we support the NBA postponing the games. Like, okay, dude, like that's not what happened. And it's an intentional use of verbiage to pretend that the NBA supported this or knew that it was going to happen. So I think the longer you postpone this, the more that falls away. And that could be good or bad in terms of negotiating. But the NBA having the ability to latch on to progressive behavior and the idea that this was a boycott or something, which that word does not fit. It was a wildcat strike. It was a strike by people who were under contract. That's what a wildcat strike is. So I don't know. Saying we're going to play the games again, that can go a few different directions. Maybe they keep the pressure on, and they keep postponing games, and then you force the NBA's hand, or maybe they just start playing tomorrow. I don't know.
I think it's fine. I think I'm into them starting again. I think these players will tell us what they want collectively, and we'll listen to them individually and find out what they want moving forward from the league and from us, the audience. It's moving so fast because it has to, because it doesn't have to, but they don't want to be in this bubble any longer than they have to be. So I think they're like, okay, let's just decide if we're doing this or not. Yeah. Are we doing this? Let's do this, because we don't want to be here, but we know we want to play these games, and I'm cool with that. I'm cool with whatever they want to do. I think they should shut it down. I've opted out of dragging statements from teams. I just don't care. That Knicks statement was funny. I just don't care anymore. The focus is on what the players say, and what the players do. And so far, I'm just paying attention because, like you said, many outcomes can come from every action here moving forward, and it doesn't help for me to have a take. It's going fast, and it seems okay to me. If they want to do it, let's do it. I'll be watching.
Yeah, I don't really care about teams' statements. I care about what they do. I care about how they support their players, how they...
Yeah, you care what ownership does, right?
What they do. So, yeah, I'm making fun of the Knicks because their statement was precisely the ham-fisted attempt to co-opt this moment.
An intern, Cookie's intern must have wrote that. I don't know where that came from. I just don't care what the Knicks say. what LeBron says. I care what Doc Rivers says. Now I care tremendously what Paul George says. You know.
Yeah, I do think that the public viewed these guys in the bubble in a way that was superficial. You know, guys voiced their concerns. We're going into this in the middle of a pandemic, away from our friends and our families and our loved ones, away from our homes, and we're going to go live in a hotel.
Yeah.
And there are civil rights protests going on around America right now, and you want me to go and emphasize basketball. And the league told them, look, it's about the money, but you'll have a platform. You can go in there and this will elevate Black Lives Matter and you'll be leaders. And the guys were like, okay, all right, we can reconcile those things. And I think, you look at NBA teams, they go on road trips, but they come home. This has just been an endless road trip for these guys. They're just sitting in a hotel all the time. And then from an outside perspective, we saw from the jump, people scorn for players complaining about the food or, being unhappy about their accommodations. Like, oh, you should be lucky. And this is the mind state that always exists about athletes, that they should just be happy that they're playing the game. Oh, you're rich. You're rich for playing a sport. We know you don't actually deserve that money, but economic forces being what they are, you're rich for playing a sport. Just show us some gratitude. Be grateful. Don't show us your sandwich. And I think even people like us who are skeptical of that point of view towards NBA players may have underestimated what it's like being in the burger bubble. These guys have now been in there for a long time.
How many
and we're only in the first round of the playoffs. These guys have been in that bubble for a minute.
Yeah. I think something I also try to opt out of is counting someone else's money. And, we have to do that. Transparency is key for everything to be fair, in theory. I like that. But, of course, I don't judge how much a player makes because, everyone is sad in different ways. And as an aside, I cannot think of the Bub without thinking of Hall & Oates, because that commercial of Jimmy Butler dancing, getting ready for the Bub, for that beer company, is just lodged in my brain. They play it every break in the game. It's like, there's Hall & Oates again. And that song is pretty incredible. And to watch Jimmy Butler kind of singing and dancing, I was like, I kind of like this ad. It can come on anytime. It's better than the Cars for Kids ads or anything. But I'm
kind of thinking of that, right? So you see that sort of ad and we see, oh, it's Ben Simmons with fishing, and here are some guys, with Thibault doing his video series of life in the bubble. Like, man, this thing might be depressing as shit.
Oh, it sucks, man. That's why I say there's urgency. We got to get them out of there and back to their families. If they want to play the games, let's do it. Snap. Every other day of rest is going to suck. People are going to get injured. I hate it. I hope Dame Lillard is okay. I hope Porzingis is okay. But the urgency is to get them home,
The Sixers showed so much initiative.
They were ethical, man.
They got in and out.
They were like, fuck this. We're not going to stay here a minute longer than we have to.
We will be the first out. Let me tell you that.
And the Celtics are like, let's make this longer. Let's prolong this thing. Right. If
not
we're
on my
here, everyone's
watch.
Here. Yeah. Embiid was like, nah, I'm going back to my family.
Toby, we're going home.
Josh Richardson's like, I got wet noodles to throw against my wall. Yeah, I mean, I think we underestimate the human experience, and that is almost, in my opinion, why we find ourselves in this situation in this country, because we don't care about people enough. And yeah, I mean, Giannis makes a ton of money, more money than I can ever imagine, but he deserves it. And so what?
Of course, of course. I mostly am talking about when they were forced to go into the bubble. They voiced the concern, as Kyrie did, that this was going to actually minimize their voices, that it would take them out of circulation as people who were going to protests and people who were active. And one could argue, I'm not saying it's completely accurate, but that the return of the NBA did sap some of the energy from the Black Lives Matter movement.
It's
I'm
hard to
saying
tell.
I agree.
It may have elevated it. I have no idea.
I'm saying, but someone could make that argument and say, well, everyone's now just watching basketball and it says Black Lives Matter, but that's not putting people in the streets. That's an opiate. It's a facsimile of activism. You're doing the mindless activity that we all love of watching basketball and tweeting about it, while there's a hashtag there that makes it feel as if it's connected to morality. And the guys may have felt this way. Jaylen Brown, even before the postponement happened, he tweeted, "I want to be out protesting." These guys, I think some of them felt as if they were taken out of circulation because they've been in there long enough that, stuff was still kind of popping off when they decided to go into the bub. And it may have cooled around the rest of the globe and America, with less media attention, just less people in the streets, etc. But these guys' mind state was they wanted to be out and protesting when they went in.
Yeah, and you're touching on something I think about quite a bit, which is just like our fatigue levels. And as we prepare for November, getting ready for the fatigue that will happen there.
See, I don't feel like these guys got fatigued like other people did because they kind of were short-circuited and forced to go in, and they're surrounded by like BLM stuff, and then it's like there's a shooting in Wisconsin. They didn't get the same fatigue necessarily that people who were not inside did.
I'm not talking about their fatigue at all. That's a different thing. I'm saying, like, as a viewer, as someone who follows the BLM movement, I think, for example, like when Kobe died and how shocking and immediate that felt, and when teams started taking shot clock violations in his honor, it was a tremendous feeling and event. But as more teams did it, we understood that. Like, we learned so fast, right? And I think with everything, however heavy it is, even like whoever's in the person in the White House now, like, we adapted so quickly where the shock was gone and we started changing. And I think I was against the bubble for the safety reasons, which ended up working out. But I was for it because I think it could have hit at the right time. And frustratingly and depressingly and sadly, Jacob Blake's murder was kind of predictable, right? We knew something was going to happen again. And that is why we're talking about this whole movement, because it's still happening. And I think even as Kyrie was saying very validly, like, we should still be active and be able to do things outside of a bubble. I think being in a bubble, all of us watching, had potential to be as meaningful. And I think what happened yesterday maybe was proof of some of that.
I agree. I think Kyrie certainly is validated.
He always is. I love him. He's great.
He gets mocked because he scorned the Celtics and because he kind of trolled people with stuff about the flat earth.
He's great, man. I mean,
Kyrie's thoughtful. He's sensitive. He was on point when he discussed this potentially short-circuiting, being active in communities and protesting. And he was concerned about it. I think he even said, like, we don't really need the owners, and everyone laughed at him.
Yeah,
like,
he started
Kyrie.
Yeah, and when he says simple things like, there's more to me than just being a ball player, everyone's like, he's nuts. I'm like, what? I mean, I love when he goes out there and he's like, Christmas is a construct. They're like, how dare you? Fair enough, man. Fair enough, buddy. That's correct, I love him. I think he thinks like the most millennial person that we can see in the NBA, and I think he's right about most things, and I don't think it helps us to be like he's validated, he's correct, but he was, and he was. But I think I think we might, and this will never happen, but it might benefit us from being like there's less right and less wrong, and more just like us scrambling in the middle.
It's funny with Kyrie because, like, when he thinks about these things and he voices them, he's always kind of pondering out loud. And if you go and you like read some of the stuff he's saying, you sort of get it.
Yeah.
It's very stony.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
It's like, well, yeah. How do we know that that's right, though? What if this is not actually right? How would we know that's the case?
Is this a dream? Is this a simulation?
Yeah, it's all super, super stony.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't really know if the guys in the bubble. Oh no, I mean, can they really make it through this healthy for another 2 months?
I don't
It's
know.
a lot, man.
We
It's
don't
a
know
lot.
anything. Yeah.
And this is not going to stop. This will happen again because we're talking about America and we're talking about law enforcement and we're talking about.
This will not stop. It
We're
might
talking about
change.
something that's happened for over 400 years. It's not going to stop.
Yeah.
A cop is going to kill somebody, and the person's going to be unarmed or a non-threat, and it's going to happen again.
Yeah. I mean, I do believe something is changing. I have to hope that, right? But I think COVID has shown our weaknesses, I think, in really obvious ways, in the way we govern and talk to each other and act and care for each other. And I think this is a big deal. I don't think it's going to snap back to normal. I don't think there's ever unseeing this.
What's really crazy to me is the group of people who have aligned themselves against the NBA.
Your boy Kush Dog?
I'm not watching the NBA again. I've watched my last game.
I gave up my Raptors season tickets I've had since 71.
Now I just follow the Celtics.
I'm going back to an organization that does things right.
But the people who are critical of the players or mock them, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? How is that? How is that human at all? This is the most basic thing in the world. We don't want to see innocent people, unarmed people, murdered by cops, shot in the back 6-7 times by cops and left paralyzed. We don't want that to happen. What are you gonna do? I wasn't watching anyway. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? It's insane. And think about the Republican Party and conservatives in general, the evolution of that group. If you go back, George Bush era, let's say, the same pillars of lower taxes on the rich and nothing for anyone poor, or no social security network type of thing. Those have been there as part of this party for a very long time. It's Reaganism. But this idea that it's all based on the culture war of owning the libs is an interesting, really exciting evolution of the conservative party. When under Bush, it was like Ashcroft and the religious right and evangelicals and born-again Christians, and there was this sense of morality that they attached to, economic cruelty. But now, there's no religious element here.
You sure?
I don't know. I don't see it offhand. It seems to be a different kind of religion, which is just a new culture war.
I mean,
it's
Trump
still a
is-
culture war, but I feel like the culture war is them bring cancel culture and.
Well, Trump is claiming Biden hates God, right?
Yeah, but that's all bullshit though. The religion has nothing to do with that party. There are obviously religious people who are Republicans, but this new tenor or voice of the Republican Party, which is it's just owning the libs. Like they don't even seem to have any particular position.
Well,
It's like,
yeah.
oh, you guys want to protest against police brutality? We're going to show up with assault weapons to protect property. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what? It's bizarre.
And I think like this, I'm not a historian of politics. Like I don't know Lyndon B. Johnson's most evil tactics, but like I think when things seem simple to maybe us or an individual, like for example, I think supporting black people is really easy. I think saying Black Lives Matters should just roll off our tongue easily. But we've come to understand why it doesn't for some people, because it means something else. Like, do people really care about assault rifles? No, they just hate their opposition. They want to be president, and I don't believe everybody who supports the NRA has an assault rifle, but they support it in a way because it aligns themselves with something. I don't think a Knicks fan necessarily enjoys every player on the team, but they're just like, ooh, the Knicks will be back. That's a bad example. But Celtics, for example. But I think what we're talking about is language, and QAnon is interesting because it's just to support Trump. It's not an exposure of the underbelly of society. It's just to own the libs. And
yeah, and I guess it's not totally new, right? Because
no,
you look at Celtics fans throwing stones at buses when they were trying to integrate schools in Boston. It's not that different from people showing up with assault rifles during BLM protests. Yeah. Like the behavior is not so different.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the statements that Southern governors made are like identical to what Trump says, or
sure.
mayors of southern cities. When the looting starts, shooting starts. I mean, it's a lot of it's verbatim.
And let's not demonize only southern states, because Jared Kushner, a New Yorker, Madison Avenue type guy, Broadway, he's like, oh, the NBA is good at slogans. Yeah, they really put out some slogans. And it's everywhere. Like, we forget the Republican Party is in New York. Trump is a New Yorker. CNN, Fox News.
For sure. I was mostly saying specifically back in the day, when you had the National Guard going down to desegregate schools, and you had Huey Long or Segregation Forever and all those guys.
Yeah.
You are 100% right, and we don't talk enough about how the brain trust of the Republican Party is a bunch of fucking people from New York.
Yeah, man, uptown parties.
It is crazy when you look and you say, wait, it's a bunch of Long Island guys and racist outer borough dudes.
Yeah, I mean
Hannity, Bill O'Reilly, your girl, what's her name? Whose daughter now wants to
Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah, I think Kellyanne Conway's from New York. Ann Coulter's from New York.
But Kellyanne
Giuliani,
Conway's
obviously.
Less drama, more mama for Kellyanne Conway, who's gonna step down from her post 2 months from the biggest moment of her boss's life. That seems right. I don't know.
But it's amazing. The modern Republican Party, the twitching nerve center. It's all people from New York.
Yeah, man. And I don't know. I kind of throw my hands up in the air a little bit. And, not being white growing up in America and growing up in New York, I know are two different things. I'm talking just my own experience. And, I am not Indian. I am not Mexican. I'm not black. I'm Chinese. And so every experience is different. But I think learning what I have access to in New York and what I don't has been a real growing experience to me,
What kind of stuff?
Certain opportunities. I mean, I went to art school and have my advantages for sure. I have a degree from college. It's insane. And I think I'm able to do things in my own field, in my own chosen field. But, there's preconceptions that go with everything. And That's why I still think about Jeremy Lin and get wistful, defund Wist. Because that was ultimately, if we're doing the most influential basketball podcast, in basketball terms, like that was a real shocking moment in my life to see someone who looked like that do that thing in New York. And realizing the power of it was because not every opportunity is available to everyone. And I've never seen someone like him do that. So I just, to your point, to your point is like New York is such a weird, awesome place for good and bad. And the brain trust of all these things that me and you have issues with are just here. And
Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about, like the absence in some ways of religion. None of these people that I just referred to are religious at all. It's not part of what brings you up as a politician in New York City and into the corridors of power. Like that might work in Arkansas, and it might work in Wyoming, or it might work in Texas. But that outer borough hostility that has been there for ages and is now almost just like a vestige of, I don't know, 1970s New York, 1980s clashes, 1950s, like whatever, is now just been like pulsed into the Republican Party. Not only, that the grievance and the resentment of like the New York Post like article commenter is like, that's the Republican Party.
And I think not all conservatives are the same, which sounds like a very general beige statement, but we have to remember that not all Republicans are the same at all. They think differently because not all Knicks fans are the same. Not all Democrats are the same. And I think it's important to call them out individually as opposed to just like all you guys or all you people.
I do think anyone who is still voting for Donald Trump at this point does not really deserve the benefit of the doubt. I just think, like, we're so far beyond that if you're voting for him, however you want to explain it, it doesn't fly.
Well,
like,
let me just try one on you, right? Like, and I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. Shocker. But I think, I listened to someone, a big deal right now is the fracking industry in Pennsylvania. And a lot of those people who work there and have votes, very important votes in a swing state. Shout out the bully state. I think, they talk at ends about how they dislike Donald Trump, but their jobs depend on his policy, and reluctantly they're going to vote for him because they don't know what to do if they don't have a job. Like, that's powerful stuff, man. That's real.
Yeah, I also just find it like deeply amoral.
Sure. I mean, we can go into ethics, but like in the immediate, they're like, I won't have a job next year if Donald Trump isn't president, and I'm really scared.
Again, like, that's just selfishness, right? I mean, I understand it. I get the concern. But
or self-preservation. I mean, it's tough to think about what selfish is. I was thinking.
Well, I mean,
about
that's
this.
the definition of it.
I don't know. So, for example, I find myself thinking like, I just want things to go back, and they can never go back, but I want things to go back to pre-COVID, where this pandemic didn't exist, because the set of challenges I had in my life seemed doable. Even in the time, I'm like, I just have to be smart and stay healthy and stick to something. And when COVID happened, it shattered all of that for everybody, most people, I think. And it got me to think if I was being selfish. If I was like, do I just want comfort? Do I want a vaccine to work because I want to go back to a place that I was at? Like, that to me rings a little bit of selfishness, and I kind of beat myself up over it. Like, my motivations are not correct. Like, I shouldn't seek comfort. I should seek change and for our overall welfare to get better after this horrible thing. And I have a tough time figuring out what that should feel like.
But these are theoretical, right?
Of
because,
course. So is selfishness, right?
well, no, I think these are different. You saying, I wish I could just go back and to how it was, or I wish there was a vaccine that could send me back, is different from tangibly going out and voting, right? Like, you just want something. And I get that those people want to keep their job in this example. Like they want to keep on fracking. But that's actually a concrete thing. It's going out and voting. You wishing something was the case is not actionable. True. So I think, there's a slippery slope between saying, well, he's voting for Trump to keep his job, and someone saying, well, I'm voting for Trump because my taxes will be less.
It's all a slippery slope. I am not voting for Trump.
I don't think you are. I'm saying, but
I'm
argument of someone saying, well, I don't want to lose my job, so I'm voting for Trump, and someone saying, yeah, I don't want to lose another 20% off of my capital gains, so I gotta vote for Trump. True. And then, if we're talking about economics and we're not talking about morality, then, it starts degrading pretty quickly.
Yeah. I guess, maybe a question I want to bring up and a thought I'm struggling with is like, I think everyone thinks they're right? If you ask anybody, I think their actions seem right. And I think I'm kind of right sometimes. And I think not having him as president is correct. But I want the best for people who think he should be president, which is a complicated thought, right? Like, I don't want these frackers to lose their jobs, man.
I do. Fracking sucks.
It does, but I want them to have jobs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, those are two different things. That's like the whole nonsense with coal miners. It's like it's a fake issue. It's like,
sure.
Well,
you're
going to lose. Like, frack.
But I'm getting at a bigger point. Okay,
I know you are, but fracking is like a really bad example of that.
I think fracking should not exist, but there should be a plan for these people.
Like, my heart goes out to the whalers. Like, sorry, dude. Like,
mine does a little bit.
Don't whale.
I don't like that. My heart goes out to the processing plants for cows. Like, I don't think that should happen either.
I agree. I'm saying I care about those people, but I can't say, like, I care about you keeping your fracking job. I care about you having a job. I care about your welfare, which is why I'm in favor of universal health care, which is why I'm in favor of all these things that help workers.
Okay, we're on the same page then.
Yes, I care about them as human beings. Like, they may do awful shit and have bad beliefs, but I still fundamentally believe that everyone is entitled to, the kind of things that, say, a older, somewhat cranky politician, maybe from Brooklyn, was trying to bring to the masses.
So, so the question I was getting at, or maybe the point or thought, is if everyone thinks they're right, and everyone commits to a life where they think is just or, ethical. And I think I'm partially right. And I think if this thing happens, it'll help everybody, even though they will think it's wrong. What if they think the same way about me? And being, there's some people who just do things to have a point. And there's other people who want the best for me. I believe they're out there in the universe who have never met me, and I think I might disagree with them. I don't know how to parse that. I don't in the moment. I know how to parse that in hindsight and foresight, but not quite in the present.
That was sort of what I was trying to get at when I was talking about the people who are in opposition to the NBA, who like taunt them and mock them for this, temporary strike. Like, do you think you're right? Or is it just, as I said, this like owning the libs, where you just strip out everything that has like a moral compass to it or a point of view, and it's just about opposition? That if NBA players had gone the other way with China, then they'd be criticizing him for that. That like it's just opposition. I genuinely don't know, and I'm with you. Like, overall, everyone thinks they're right. The bigger problem is that people don't change their opinions when they're presented with, evidence to the contrary.
I love people who change their minds so much.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue, right?
Yeah.
Like, you'll see it in sports all the time. just obviously the Sixers, for example. Everyone says Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons can't play together. And you're like, well, look, here are the numbers. They had the best starting lineup now 3 seasons ago. They had virtually the best starting lineup 2 seasons ago. They had the best starting lineup in the playoffs against, the Nets and Raptors, despite losing to Toronto. And people are like, yeah, they can't play together. You got to get rid of one of them. You're like,
Right.
But I just showed you this. Right. When they're on the court together with your boy Tobias Harris, net zero, they're like plus 20 or something. They're really good. Nah, I think you got to trade Ben. He can't shoot. You're like, okay, man. Everyone thinks they're right, but to me, that's the issue. No one's willing to acknowledge that they're wrong a lot. We do this on Cookies all the time. We're always wrong, especially you, but I'm wrong as well. We're wrong all the time, and we say it.
Listen, we gave COVID a shot. We were like, okay, let's see how this goes. We hate it. We fucking hate COVID.
I'm saying, man. We kept the defense honest against COVID. We gave it every chance to earn our adoration. And what did it do? No accountability.
It's unethical. It sucks. We hate it. Kick him out of the league. COVID is done.
Oh, absolutely. Wouldn't even shoot threes.
I mean, this is my whole Knicks. And if we were talking about this, I'm constantly trying to change my mind about every Knicks draft pick, every Knicks player, every Knicks action. I'm like, is this how I think about the team already? Or what is actually happening? It's like, oh, the Knicks have a terrible pick. I'm like, or they have a pick, which is nice. Because they usually don't. I don't know.
Bad faith acting in sports is totally fair.
Yeah, that's why it exists, right?
It's funny.
Yeah, it's very funny.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what's happened to America. It's just the rise of just bad faith actors just everywhere.
I know.
Everyone's a bad faith actor that we have to vote for. You pick them, they're a bad faith actor.
Oh, and my question is that what it takes? If you don't participate, do you have a chance? Man, the technology has changed everything. The way we talk to each other, the way we share ideas, and as this is going to go up on Patreon for our subscribers, our ethical subscribers,
who we love very much and respect, and let's be honest, heavily reward for such a minor financial commitment.
There's a good deal on Patreon, right? A whole year for $50. That's 2 months for free, guys.
Is that how much it is? I don't even know.
I think it's $50 for a year.
Yeah.
All right, I'll call the interns. I'll rattle the cage and see what they did.
That is, are we allowed to sell it for that little?
Is
that legal for people to get a year of Patreon for $50?
Is $50 for cookie soups for 12 months street legal?
That's so far from Tobias Harris money.
Well, if you multiply by that and then you get to zero, we're at Tobias Harris again. But I don't know, man. I think I'm thankful for the NBA because they have yet again given us a way to talk about something that's hard to talk about, and people could go there and be like, I'm done with the NBA, or me and you can be like, we love these guys so much. It gives us a way to talk about something that is happening in our world. And these guys are leaders. I say this over and over, and it's sad that it comes to my mind again at every episode. But Jaylen Brown is a leader. Even Donovan Mitchell, LeBron James. I really look for their words. And I think they've really come through for us lately.
What I've enjoyed is that as basketball fans, we've been as hard on players and opponents as normal. And then when the topic shifts to this, everyone's on the same team.
Yes, they brought us together, right?
And I think that's awesome, that you can still maintain your scorn for Jason Tatum as a completely overrated player. A third-tier conventional wing. But as soon as he's like, oh, let's do this, you're like, absolutely, my guy. Yeah. But we're actually on the same team.
Yeah.
And I think that's been amongst, hoops media, and basketball players and basketball fans a fairly united front.
I agree. And anyone who acts differently, I forgive because they're just singing a song. This is just a tune that they're stuck in their head. I'm like, you don't mean this. Did I ever tell you a story about I was watching a game? I have. I'll say it again. I was watching a game, and I really loved back in the day on Houston Street. There was a place called Barraquette, and they had these amazing gyros and sandwiches and
Love that
falafels.
spot.
So good, lentil soup. And it was halftime in the game, and I ran out to get, I think, a falafel and some soup. And it was Friday night, and as I was running home to catch the second half, some bar person was like, "Hey," and yelled a racial slur at me. And I heard it loudly, and I just kept on walking. And he runs after me and goes, "Hey, did you hear what I said to you?" And in my mind was like, why would I stop and talk to you? The second half of the game is going to start, and I have this delicious food. Like, I can't spend my time with you. I forgive you for being a jerk. Can I just go? Will you release me? You know? And I think about that quite a bit growing as an adult. I mean, that happened decades ago. But I think about that always, and even in a moment like this with the NBA, it's like, if you're angry at what the NBA is doing, like, it's okay. I release you from this. We release you from this because too much important stuff is happening. I can't get bogged down by you yelling at me. I got a game to watch.
And, with Jared Kushner being like, well, what are your guys' solutions? Excuse me?
Get out of here, man.
I'm sorry, what?
The action is the solution. This is great. This is its own solution.
Look, if we're going to solve racism, it's going to have to come from the NBA players. Guys.
Show me. Write it down. Show me what we're going to do.
No, we have a solution. Stop being racist. No, come on. What else you got? No, the solution is pretty obvious. You guys have to stop being racist. Look, you're just going to have to get more concrete about what you'd like for us to do here. And I don't have, white guilt exactly. It is wild to realize that as a white dude, it is solely my demographic that is propping up Donald Trump, and is solely the reason that he is a threat to become president again. And that has become, and always was for the most part, but very much, that's just what the Republican Party is. It's white dudes. They voted, and I say they, I'm talking about Republicans, but my demographic voted, I think 75% for Mitt Romney against Obama. You're like, what? Come on, white guys, pull it together. And you got cargo shorts. Everything's going to be okay.
The bonobros, get it together.
Seriously, I mean, it's just white dudes. We look at the country's in absolute shambles. Just white guys, man.
Listen, Ben, some of my closest friends are white.
White women are not doing great either, but it's really, really white dudes.
I know, and it's always confusing. Sometimes the hottest take is the simplest idea. I love white people. And I was like, that's what? I'm like, oh, I love white people. Ben, I love you. I love my closest friends. You guys are white. You guys are great. This is such a hard thing to kind of extrapolate. And you're right. People who look like you voted a certain way. But that's okay, right?
It's not okay at all. But I mean, it's not close to okay.
I said a certain way because you're not voting for.
No, I just mean...
you can vote for whoever you want to vote for.
Oh, well, sure.
Which it sounds like a hot take, too, right? Because we spent all pod being it's unethical to vote this way.
Well, you have the right, certainly, to vote however you want.
That's the most American thing, right?
Yeah, of course.
Shout out to the post office.
And kind of going back to the stuff I keep dragging back is the idea of owning the libs, and I think that's part of the sort of white male feeling under siege, and that Me Too and BLM and cancel culture are all targeting the white male, and that's why they're doubling down on this sort of resentment of these cultural moments, because they feel as if they are assaults on the primacy of the white male in America.
I mean, revolution is such an American idea, right? We still brag about dumping tea into the harbor, but that was a big deal. But it's sort of I'm obsessed with where someone's karma begins or ends, and if it favors them or someone else. Where does that revolution begin? Because to get to the point where America was founded on this idea, a lot of crazy bad stuff happened, right? Like awful things that are finally being discussed in frank terms by millennial generations. Like Gen X was kind of walloped by. There I said I said walloped again. What is happening, man? It's malarkey, man. But it's a deeply American thing, and your thought about the people who do vote for Trump is probably true. And in their own minds, I think they feel like they're revolutionary. A 17-year-old white guy with a gun running through the streets feels like he's revolutionary, right?
Everyone watches Star Wars. I think their point of view is the Jedi.
Are we the baddies? Yeah.
It's 100% that.
Yeah.
Everyone is trying to, fight off the hordes of evil. Everyone is the last paladin. Like, oh, I'm a 17-year-old white guy. Well, looks like we're going to have to get my assault rifle and go protect a Quiznos.
Odd choice of restaurant, but I'm with it. Toasted sandwiches?
Yeah, man. There he is in his shining armor of a Hawaiian shirt, killing people on the street. Crazy, dude. Crazy.
And I think what we're going through now, we can do it. Like, I think we can slowly lurch towards a better place. I have no option. I do have an option, but I'm taking this option. I think that there are thinking minds out there with some power that will be able to lurch us to a better place, a place that's more whole, and to think about the country my parents moved to and how different that was from now is astonishing, right? Like, it was illegal to be in a biracial marriage, and now it's not. And I hope we all live long enough to see enough change for to satisfy something. I don't know what people want.
Well, what's the phrase? The arc of history bends towards justice. Is that the phrase?
Sounds about right.
Might be true.
Checks out. Yeah.
No, might be. But I don't think we should lose focus on what's happening now. I'm not saying that people are, but nothing is actually guaranteed here. And we are at a pretty precipitous point.
I agree.
It's not just like, well, if we just hold tight, things will be cool.
Oh no, this is.
I'm not saying you are suggesting this. I just mean I kind of agree with that idea that things will get better just because the alternative sucks.
Sucks so
well,
bad.
things are just going to go downhill from here.
Which is a take out there.
Over and over and over and over and over. Just it's going to get progressively worse on an annual basis for the rest of the time.
Right.
Yeah, we can't really rock with that just as living creatures.
I choose not to, yeah.
Yeah. But I do think what's brewing is important, and I do believe in younger people, and I do believe in the kind of individuals who are getting into politics now and rejecting the centrism that has overtaken the Democratic Party and the pragmatism that's, well, I would say this, the policies that are described as pragmatic but are not. I think we're getting young progressive people into the Democratic Party that can change things that have been installed for a long time. And there's obviously going to be so much resistance to that. But I am energized by what the NBA players are doing and what, some recent politicians who are, elected in New York and elsewhere, people of color, people with, roots in democratic socialism. Mm-hmm. So I am optimistic in some ways about the next generation.
Yeah, man. I'm into it.
But it's also, man, it's going to be a fight.
Yes.
You want to get rid of the Sixers front office, got to keep at it. They will try to maintain their clutches on decision-making powers as long as they possibly can. They will sling Brett Brown under the bus. They will do anything to keep power, and that's like what we're dealing with here.
And like time is undefeated, so like, eventually we're gonna see a change just regardless of action. But you made me think of Chris Webber a bit and what he said yesterday, and that was my lasting memory of last night, just following every second of it. And what he was saying on TNT was pretty incredible. And I'm glad Cookies, the most influential basketball podcast, supported him last week. I think he is a sympathetic narrator of a thing that's hard to understand. And what he's trying to do, he gets caught up in syllables sometimes, but I like listening to him because he's trying a thing. He's trying to personalize the player experience because he was a player. And he got on TV yesterday and talked about the young people and how he's proud of these young players. And it shouldn't be lost that he was also young once, but also a very controversial player, and felt that criticism in a way that I hope no one else feels ever again when he blew that finals game for Michigan. And he didn't really blow it. They were behind anyway. But like, he called a timeout when they had none and basically forfeited the game. And there's a documentary about it, and this is very much our generation, the Fab Five. And I remember when they came out in black socks and black shoes and long shorts, the reverberations of the UNLV team that Larry Johnson and Stacey Augmon were a part of, and Greg Anthony, like, people clutched their pearls a little bit. And they're like, you guys are corrupting the sacred, hallowed grounds of college sports with your rap music. And Chris Webber was like, whatever you say, we're going to dunk on everybody. It was like a really sad moment as a kid. I remember watching that. And
I fucking cried.
Yeah,
I literally wept.
It was sad. And I recommend that documentary. I think it's on ESPN to anybody because there's footage there that'll break your heart. But that I'd never seen. But what he said last night was interesting. And what stuck with me, sort of like, what stuck with me was, he said Charles Barkley came to his high school and he talked about his hands. And it was so cool because it was such a personal experience. Like, you can talk about what Chuck meant talking to young people and how Chuck was actually, I'm not your, what was his Nike slogan?
I'm not a role model.
I'm not a role model. He very much was, right? And he was a great one, in my opinion. But Weber talked about him coming to his school. And what came out of his mouth was so surprising to me. It's like his hands. I saw his hands. You have to see this thing to believe it, that you could be this thing. And the end of the Marbury documentary has the same power. But I really can commiserate with that thought, right?
Yeah, I thought Weber was phenomenal, and that was one of the more poignant things he said. But the whole thing was great. And if you haven't watched it, it's like 3 minutes, at least the part that I saw. And it's fantastic. And some interesting context to Chris Webber is that he is a collector of like black correspondence. I guess you could call it antiques or historical, however you wanted to.
Wait, really?
Describe it. Yeah, he has a collection, and it's been shown in museums in like Sacramento and other places that he's played. And it's like letters from freed slaves to other slaves, and like wooden handcuffs that were held to, shackle a slave. And he's got all these letters, stuff that's signed by, I'm saying like Harriet Tubman. I'm not sure exactly that, but it's like those kind of historical figures, and like first editions of books.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so he was speaking with not only the fluency of lived experience, but as someone who is deeply, deeply involved in this from like a historical standpoint and very well versed.
Yeah, totally. And not to forget, for like Zoomers, he was everything in the NBA at one point. He was vilified in Washington, frowned upon, I believe, in Golden State, and then really changed and transformed when he went to Sacramento and played with Peja and Bibby and Jason Williams and Vladi. Like, he became a different person and player. And I think
He was my favorite athlete before Allen Iverson.
he was good. He was so good. Yeah, he was. He had a gravity to him that should not be understated. And I know Twitter likes to mock the way he calls a game, which is fair game. Like, he has trouble with framing it, and he's getting better, in my opinion. But I'm happy. I was surprised and delighted to see him put his thoughts together so concisely.
Yeah, me too. If people are too young to have really understood who Chris Webber was, or maybe you just weren't following basketball at the time, he was not only the paragon of like coolness and introduced, hip hop culture to college basketball, as you described earlier, in a way that really was viewed as scandalizing.
Yeah.
From, in an era when you had Bobby Knight in his sweater vests throwing
Christian
chairs
Laettner.
around, and exactly. So, you can't understate his cultural significance. But as a person, people saw him scowl and bark. But if you got it, you got it.
Yeah, exactly.
You knew that he was this sensitive, sweet, very smart kid.
And emotional.
You could see it. You could see it in his eyes and when he spoke, that he was not this caricature of like reckless young blackness that people, vilified. That he had so much nuance as a player, and you got it. He had like this sense of joy and this spark and effervescence to him. And the whole Fab Five was awesome, but he was the one.
He was the one.
He was everything, as you said. And that moment of him calling the timeout and that sticking with him, it's so clear that has like haunted him
His whole life.
Yeah. You making a dumb, brainless, panicked move when you're 18 years old, and it just follows you forever. And you're this already sensitive, intellectual kid, and now all of a sudden you're viewed by everyone as dumb, and you're a choker, and you're soft, and you're not mentally strong. Like, the burden that he carried for no goddamn reason is so unfair. When he spoke, I felt that.
For sure. And I hope, even the evolution of the sports fan is slow moving, but it's happening. Like, I hope the takeaway with what we do here is like, these guys are all success stories, and they succeed and fail in micro moments, but like, Nikolai Tchitchkavili did it, man. Like Sam Bowie did it. And like, these guys, it takes a lot to get to this point. And they may miss a shot, or they may get hurt, or they may not be as good. But they should be celebrated, And and when the narrative of someone like Chris Webber plays out, it's very frustrating because he is so good. He was so good.
Well, yeah, let's let the narrative of Chris Webber play out.
Well, EJ, it was reported that 4 years ago today, in a preseason game in Wisconsin, that Kaepernick first took a knee. No, this has never happened before, but I'm sure that Dr. Harry Edwards, Dr. John Carlos, Arthur Ashe, Jackie Robinson, and others have been praying for this day. Shout out to Kenny that walked off. I wanted to have a voice in here because I feel like we only had the same couple voices talking during these times. So it was very important for me to come over here. I keep hearing the question like, what's next, what's next? Well, you got to plan what's next. You have to figure out what's next. I'm very proud of the players. I don't know the next steps. Don't really care what the next steps are because the first steps are to garner attention. And they have everybody's attention around the world right now. Then leadership and others will get together and decide the next steps. So we know it won't end tomorrow. We know that there's been 1 million marches and nothing will change tomorrow. We know vote. We keep hearing vote. Everybody vote. But I'm here to speak for those that are always marginalized. Those that live in these neighborhoods where we preach and tell them to vote and walk away. Charles Barkley came to my high school. Just seeing him in the locker room, seeing his hands and his body, that inspired me. You can't see something. You can't be something until you see it. And when I tell you the little kids that have called me upset, I have a godson that has autism, and I just had to explain to him why we aren't playing. I have young nephews that I've had to talk to about death before they've even seen it in a movie. If not now, when? If not during a pandemic and countless lives being lost, if not now, when? That's all I just want to hear from the rest of the night, where everybody's pontificating and thinking and soapboxing and all of that. We know nothing is going to change. We get it. If Martin Luther King got shot and risked his life, Medgar Evers, if we've seen this and all of our heroes constantly taken down, we understand it's not going to end. But that does not mean, young men, that you don't do anything. Don't listen to these people telling you don't do anything, because it's not going to end right away. You are starting something for the next generation and the next generation to take over. Do you have to be smart? Yes. Do you have to make sure that you have a plan? Yes. Do you have to be articulate about that plan? Yes. All of those things. But that's what you're going to do. They're professionals. They know how to be the best of themselves. And so I applaud it. I applaud it because it is the young people. It is the young people leading the way, and I applaud them.